What was life like for me between wife number one and wife number two? That's what I'll talk about a little bit here. Well, it was 22 years between wives. So I was in my early 30s, my first divorce, and then I remarried in my mid-50s. So you talk about 22 years of hell. Actually, it wasn't hell. It was independence. But I had to earn it, man. You know what I mean? Because I was really focused on business. I was focused on my kids before pleasure. And I was successful at both. So it didn't go to my head. In fact, I was probably financially saving for my fear of being broke. So, between wife one and wife two, not only did I have a leadership position, an executive position, I ended up buying that company, put everything on the line, every penny I had after my divorce, whatever was left, let's just say. Then I had to go out and take out multiple loans. And I had to go find out a financial partner. So I lost control. However, I was the operating partner. Okay? So in the first 5 years, my partner in finance asked me to acquire my stake, my equity position. And I was shocked because I thought I was just starting to roll it up. I was going to get back on top, whatever that meant. In the meantime, that was another divorce because that took 2 years to break up with my financial business partner. And that, it wasn't as ugly as a divorce because it's logical, it's rational, and it's all with professional services. It's all about money. And it was hard for me to let go. But you know what I had? I had the experience of a marital divorce, which was good. And my partner was 10 years older than me, and he had a lot of experience in acquiring companies. So, I was up against a lot of shit, man. And my kids were all under high school age. So I had to work with them to make sure they got good educations, good morals, good values, and so on. Because in a way, I was a single parent when it came down to discipline and education and leadership and example. And I'm not undervaluing that. That was a huge value. In the meantime, I was getting beat up by financial people, banks, valuation people, lawyers. So I was right back on the fucking stove, going through another divorce, a business divorce, as they would call it. And the president that he assigned, even though I was the president, I allowed them to bring in the president because I was so in need of sales and marketing because I was the face of the company. Okay? And I approved that because I just wanted to grow the company. So it was okay. Didn't have a problem because, 1 + 1 = more than 3 when you grow a company. So I was okay with that. But I had to learn about board of directors. I had to meet with people. I don't feel that they like me. Did you hear that? I don't think that my partner and his family and the president of the company liked me as a person because I was much more aggressive than them. And I was in sales. They were basically financial people and hid behind the P&L. They didn't do the work. That's how I'm sure a lot of you people believe, that you do the work, but you're not compensated well for it. Well, I was lucky because I was a partner of 40%. So I got to see everything. And the president, who had zero equity, did not like me because I had power. I had control. I could veto his suggestions. He didn't like that. So once I mentioned before, between wife one and wife two, that's 22 years. So I spent 5 years fucking around with those guys. And I made out financially. In a way, I had no fear of financial success at that age. I was under 40. But what my fear was, what am I going to do because what value am I? Because I was at that original company for 17 years. That's all I knew. So I had to transition and transformation of my personal life and my business life. And that was very hard because it's kind of like a stop and go. If you guys played hockey or ran baseball, stops and starts, if you remember those stops and starts, you hated them, right? You'd go so many feet, stop, go back until you were exhausted. That's what it was like. I was exhausted from a divorce in 88 and a divorce in 93 from business. And then I had to start all over again because that 17 years was my value. However, I had to renegotiate my world because I had a non-compete for 3 years. So I had to reevaluate my future endeavors and ventures. And by the way, I had no help. It was my dime, every dime. And at the same time, my kids were coming up. And a lot of you people are facing that, especially if you're going through divorce in your 40s and 50s. You got kids and they want to go to college or whatever. So I was on my kids about doing well in school, getting good grades, taking all the high-end IB classes, because that's how you earn it to get there. And then at the same time, play sports. So I have 3 kids, trying to get them educated, because in my family, it was more about family business than it was about education. And there were promises that we were going to get the family business. It didn't happen that way. Didn't happen that way. Didn't happen that way for my father. Didn't happen that way for the 11 kids. But I took a risk. And so I didn't know what I was going to evolve into. I didn't know. I just knew that no one was going to hire me. And then I would go into companies and basically say, I could be your growth operator. I became a consultant. But I'll tell you, I dealt with a lot of idiots. Second generation, third generation of families, and I knew the father and the grandfather. I'm serious, because I started at 21 in my career and in sales. So I was rocking and rolling. So by the time I was 40, that's 20 years later, I knew a lot of our competitors. I knew a lot of the suppliers. I knew a lot of the other operations. But I got a hell of an education in those 17 plus years with 3M and my father and so on. And I always hired great mentors. Did you hear that? I hired them. I paid them. But then I had a few awesome that did not want to get paid. And don't forget, I'm still early 40s. So I was getting bored. And I was doing deals. I was doing deals in Germany, for an example. And they fired me in a way. Actually, they didn't fire me. They basically realized that, God, I was going to make too much money. And that's always an issue with people. If you make too much money, it's always some issue. Just like my partner. I was a sales guy. They thought I was making too much money because I got a personality. So what was I doing between those marriages is basically working. Working, trying to create something, trying to build something. Raise my kids to do the best they could so they could actually go out and do what they want to do. I didn't want my kids, like my father would say, he didn't want my brothers and sisters and I to be a burden. He didn't want to be, my mother and father didn't want to be a burden to the 11 kids because we were all eventually married, And when you're married, you're bringing in a second family. So those 22 years, constantly building multiple businesses. I started up another business, manufacturing company in Minnesota, and I built that for 5-6 years, all on my own, because I didn't want any partners, and I suffered, man, because I was in debt, man, close to 7 figures, and I didn't know if I was going to get through this. And once again, I was the face of the company, but I needed people to operate the day-to-day. So I was, again, a workaholic, 12 to 16 hours, traveling all the time, including international travel. And I'm a kind of an idea guy. I'm always got ideas. But I've learned as I've aged that not every idea is going to work. So you have to learn how to let go, or actually not even start a project once you realize it's too risky. And as you get older, you start getting to be more conservative. You know what I mean? And I always felt I paid my employees very well, at least competitive, because I had to recruit good people. I had facilities. I leased facilities. I didn't even learn, the dangers of spending and investing and betting on the come. Because I always thought, I'm going to get through this. I'm young enough, I could make up for my losses. Nah, it doesn't happen that way, man. So even though I'm talking about the 22 years dash of my journey, I see a lot of people today that were in my position, either married, about to divorce, or in the process of divorce and lost their jobs. I was in a great position because I had ownership. I could call my own shot. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody can do it. So once again, I sold that business the second time around in 2002. And I sold it myself, so I really learned from the first one how to do a merger and acquisition, how to buy a business, how to sell a business. And I did a couple deals in those 5-6 years because I was a deal maker. So when I think of Trump doing deals, negotiations, he's got a business mind. That's how I was. But at the same time, I worked on integrity. And the other thing is, I was willing to take a loan out. Not everybody's willing to make decisions and take money of their piggy bank, looking at the future. So, sold a business, and then I was dating people off and on, engaged. In those 22 years, I was engaged, or let's say pre-engaged, or call it a friendship ring. So I spent probably an easy mid-5 figures on rings that I never got back. Had a prenup drawn up, walked away from that when she walked away from it. So I said, okay, we're not getting married. And during those 22 years, I had requirements or criteria of a type of woman I'm looking for. And I've talked about this. I had the 3 L's. I had a lust first. Number 1 is lust. Number 2 is love, fall in love. And number 3, my biggest fear was the 3rd L, which is litigation, because I went through it when I was in my 30s. So I'm telling you, did I trust everybody? Not always, but I was an easy target because I wanted some entertainment in my life. But looking at the criteria, I wanted to meet somebody that, in a way, either divorced, single, never married, no kids, or kids out of the house would have been a problem for me until later. And then had a job where I had some passion. Didn't have to have huge assets, just enough to say, I'm content in my life. And what I really learned over that time is foundation is so important. And a lot of my family values, morals, and ethics through business and so on, through my parents, most people, plus having a big family of 10 brothers and sisters, is very abnormal, the people I met. Very small families. And the foundation is critical. And so, as I mentioned before, the people that I met over those 22 years really didn't meet the qualifications, or eventually colors show on me or them. And then don't forget, I wanted to make sure I picked the right horse that would understand my situation. In other words, I'm a hard worker, I'm an entrepreneur, I provide for my children, I have alimony. That was another one. I had lifetime alimony between those 22 years. And that was scary for people, and that was one of my excuses. Oh, well, when that's over, maybe we'll get together. Well, it didn't happen. So I eventually moved to Florida, sold all my homes, my furniture, everything. My home that I really acquired while my kids were in high school, thinking on a golf course to say, come on out more often, we'll play golf and hang out. And I was proud of that because I call it a home base. And by the way, that was my first home, I believe, that I purchased. Because I was renting apartments and townhomes from the very beginning of the divorce in 1988. I couldn't afford anything. So I put it all into a business, which I could have lost, but God helped me out and I got through it. So when I sold the place, I went down to Florida and I was dating a young woman that I broke her heart because I didn't know, it was that serious that, I thought, well, I'll be back. So I thought I'd commute. So I bought a place in a condo in Minnesota. And then in Florida, I rented. So I just thought, well, I'll commute. I was still working. I was still cutting deals. I was independent. I was more of a consultant. And things were evolving. Okay? And the biggest thing is when you're alone and you're single, you try to make up. You try to make up your loneliness, your solitude, your abandonment. You start doubting yourself. What's life all about, Elfie? God help me. What's next? Don't let me do something stupid. I mean, there was a lot, So my feelings are when I moved down to Florida, which is here, my parents were here. I had no intent on, I didn't know what I was going to do. So I got my real estate license because I realized that to sell businesses or buy businesses and so on, an edge would be if you had your commercial license or your real estate license in the state of Florida that covers commercial and business brokerage. So that's what I did. And then I had to work for somebody to gain the experience. And then my mentor was in his 90s. And he sold it to a guy in his, let's say, 50s or 60s. He was maybe 10 years older than me. And he wasn't a person what I would call trust. So I always went to the 90-plus-year-old to discuss my situation. And he would tell me. So my parents were here. I was here under 50. I was like 48, 49. And unemployed and unemployable. I went out and tried to get a few jobs. And most of them would say, well, you're overqualified. You could run this place. You should own this place. And then eventually somebody took a shot. Signage company hired me and said, Rock, and it was woman-owned. And it was sales on commission. I thought, well, yeah, I know the business. I know the suppliers. I could do this. And I was bored. Living alone, renting an apartment. My parents were within 15 minutes of me. So I'd see my parents almost every Sunday, go to church, have something to eat, and so on. And still struggling on my personal level of loneliness and solitude, and I'm not good enough, and what's next? And my dad used to say, what do you need to do? You need that like you need a hole in the head, Because it was like, relax, man. You're set. Don't worry about it. Well, I was never what I would call set. And my kids were in college. I believe they were all in college or out of high school for sure. And then a couple of them, well, actually all three of them got married before I married for the second time. And in a way, I kind of waited. And during that 22 years, I threw a pitch at my ex-wife, number one. At the wedding, I saw her really happy with the guy she was dating. And I said to myself on that weekend, I went, she's really happy. I think she's going to marry this guy. And her mother looked even more happier because I think they thought this guy was going to marry her daughter. And I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to go back on Monday after the weekend, contact an attorney that's more of a sales guy versus I know the law. Bullshit. You don't need the law. Yeah. I needed somebody to pitch to the judge that I think it's been long enough to make a one-time offer to my ex-wife. And I did. A one-pager. And we had the narrative on what we were going to do, what the strategy was, the money I spent since 1988, what I fulfilled my 48-page decree and she did not, and submitted it. I was in Minnesota at the time because it was Minnesota-based jurisdiction. Came back to Florida in my apartment. The attorney contacted me and he says, Rock, she signed off. I went, what? She signed off a one-time buyout of a lifetime alimony. I says, oh man, that's fantastic. Of course, cash. And he says, but hold it. I says, what? Just because she signed it and you signed it doesn't mean the judge is going to sign off on it. I'm like, oh my God. And it's the same judge from many, many years prior. God, that was 2004. So that's 16, 17 years I was paying her alimony. And the kids, the youngest one was 5. So I paid child support for 3 of them. 13 years. So it was on and on and on. And, it's unbelievable. So I went back to the apartment a couple days later, and I had a fax machine. Everybody remember a fax machine? I had a fax machine in my closet. And I went into the closet, and there was a printout and a fax from my attorney with a signature from the judge. You know what I ended up doing? I sat there at the kitchen table of this small little fucking apartment, and I cried. It was finally over. But at that time, I was pretty much forgiving her for all the pain because I had so much success during that time. Plus, I was dating some hot women. Makes it easier. So that was in 2004. And then I just kept going. Kept on working, bought a condo in Florida after it was rebuilt after going through 5 hurricanes, which are scary, man. 5 hurricanes, no electric, all this. My parents were down here. And then the family started moving down. A couple brothers, all that. And it was okay. I was happy. I was making money. I was happy with the kids. I was seeing some grandkids coming in. And traveling, healthy. What else was I doing? Educating myself. Doing some deals. I started going into bigger deals. Working with private equity versus the hundreds of thousands to low millions, starting to talk billions, and much more sophisticated. I went to court on a collection on a guy and his company who did, in my mind, wasn't a very honest guy. And I learned my lesson. That's very difficult to get justice and righteousness when lawyers are involved and judges and what I call the system. Don't go into the system, no matter what. Harvey McKay, back in the 70s and 80s, he used to be a motivational speaker in Minnesota. He's still alive. He's in his 90s, I believe. He said something very important. He's the author of Swimming with the Sharks. I think it's that. He had a series. And my brother and I went to watch him at a motivational speaking engagement, which was in the auditorium. I mean, this guy pulled a lot of people in. And he said something that both my brother and I talk about. If you have the opportunity to buy yourself out of a problem, do it. And that's what I learned over time. And I'll give that example down the road here. But that's one of the mistakes I made in my life by going to divorce court and thinking there was going to be justice and righteousness and they're going to do the right thing. And the way I tried to raise my kids, they were all young and so on. And you know what? I got the shit kicked out of me. So I learned. And when I think about it, after all these years, I look at my ex-partner, who's probably 10 years older than me, so he's in his 80s, and he's still active. I think he looked at me like my first wife, like, what a prick. Because I made out. You know what I mean? Made out big. And I didn't make it easy. And in fact, my dad read my memoir. I got a book out called They Named You Right. It's on Amazon. My memoir, my dad read it and he brought, I can't believe what you did. How you made that that move, he was really proud of me because he knew that he taught me well. In other words, fuck you. And that's what we call it. Fuck you money. Once you get fuck you money, which I got at 39, you can do this shit. What I'm hoping for you to learn from me is watch your money, man. Watch your money, and there's a lot to it before you get married. And today there's a lot of opportunities to be careful, to walk away. There's prenups, there's protective orders, there's so much shit out there. There's private investigators. I mean, there's so much to protect yourself before you even think about getting married to somebody. And take your time. I think it takes 2 to 3 years, at least. And then really find out from their family and so on. And you're gonna know. You're gonna know. So that 22 years of solitude and independence and freedom, I had some mentors. I took care of myself. I'm in much better shape in Florida than I was in Minnesota because I take the time out. I'm not a drinker, not a smoker. I try to eat right because now that the doctors, and seeing my father pushing 100, my mom was 94. I used to bring him to the doctor all the time, and now it's me going to the doctor 2-3 times a week. And I'm surprised, I'm shocked, but I'm more into prevention. And even consider a nutritionist. Watch your blood big time, man, especially if you're under a lot of stress. And I look at all the stress that I've been on. I've broken out in hives many times. And they would say, hey, that's stress. That's not me, man. I don't have high blood pressure. I don't have this. I don't have that when I was younger. Now it's like, fuck, I break out in hives. It depends on what I eat, if I'm stressful. But these are all signs. They're all signs. You got to think about that. And that's what I keep telling you. The health is more important than the spouse. Your kids are important, but lead your kids into good example. Be a good example, very quietly. Actually be humble and appreciate that you were lucky and you were blessed. And that's why I have a deep faith, because I really believe God helped me a lot. And I went to church, oh boy, I was a daily mass because I was suffering, man. And I was probably the youngest person in the church on a daily basis. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about that dash in between your life and your death date. And 22 years of that dash were instrumental for me. And that's why I've written a lot too. I got books, I got publications. I have all this on my website. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is, I call it the 3 T's. How to make a decision in business, how to make a decision in selecting your partners, your friends, and then learning how to walk away with dignity. And the 3 T's are, number 1 is trust. You trust this person. You always go into a situation, you trust them, right? Yeah, of course. Then there's transparency. How transparent are they? Because once you get betrayed, you go, whoa. But transparency is important for business, of course, the due diligence. But in marriages, I made the mistake of not doing a background check, okay? And now that's when I'm coaching. And number 3 is timeline. Give it so much time. In business, you only have 30, 60, 90 days or a year to make something happen. You know, it's strategic. Everything's strategic. And timelines are very important. Don't get pushed into something that you could sleep on and get up the next day and say, you know what, I've decided to make a decision. I do that often. I used to be a knee-jerk guy because I just expected that people have morals, ethics, the money to cut this deal or partner with me or whatever. No. You got to be very careful, man. And then the spouse is even more important. I look at my father, he picked the right horse. He picked my mom. Very common today not to be married a lifetime. Very common. And the other issue is You got to be really careful as you age. Blended families. I tease about crime TV, such as 20/20, 48 Hours, Dateline. It's always the spouse, isn't it? So that's kind of what I want to talk about in between. Now, you could go back and look at Life After Wife #1. You'll be seeing that soon on these videos on YouTube. And then I'm going to put one on how I met my second wife and how Life After Wife #2. This is all a heads up, man. And the other thing I've noticed is I'm getting more and more comments from women on my YouTube channel. I love that. Because let's face it, guys, as I'm talking about men, we could be pricks. I know that. I've been a prick. I'm not husband material. Am I a generous guy? Am I a happy guy? Yeah. But I have high expectations. My assistant used to tell me for a long time, Rock, your expectations are too high for people. Not everybody's built like you. And you know what? She's right. And my dad was the same way. You have the high, medium, low expectation. My dad's was excellence. Your expectation to be this and a high wasn't good enough. He wanted excellence. And I'm a lot like that. But I realize now after all these years that nobody's going to meet my expectations. I'm afraid that I'm not going to meet God's expectations because I'm hoping for heaven. So let's see what I got left. So that's about it. So once I became 65, I got Medicare. I was also married at that point. Got Medicare, and then I took Social Security at my full benefit, which was 66. I was born in 54. So I got that, and I worked. And I had some of my best years in the last 2 years of what I would call my transitional years into retirement. When I say retirement, it's just a transition to another career. And I talked to all my contractors and the people that worked with me who were very, because I'm the rainmaker. I'm a rainmaker. I'm not a doer. But I come up with the ideas. I'm an idea guy, and I would go out and get the right people for valuations, how to write my words articulately, and then go get them published. I have a ghostwriter for my first book. My second book is already at full manuscript. I'm going to probably release that next year. So, I've done a lot. And YouTube, I just said, you know what? I'm going to do YouTube. I can do YouTube. Keeps me healthy. I started bowling. I've never really bowled since high school. I used to golf a lot. And that just took too much time. And, who wants to get into foursome and you realize that the guy's a prick and I got to spend 3-4 hours with this guy? Then they all want to drink after and say, that's not me. So I donated all my golf clubs, all that stuff. I love hockey. I love watching hockey, NHL, college, baseball. I'm a big baseball guy. My kids played baseball, hockey, tennis, golf. So I love it. So I think that's what I really wanted to say is if I could do it, you could do it. But you really have to start having goals. And when you have these goals or aspirations or achievements, they don't have to be grandiose. Whatever you think is best. The bottom line, like my mother said, is when you die, you want to die happy. My mother passed away happy. Her body just gave out after 12 pregnancies, And she was a very faithful woman. When I see butterflies, I think of my mother all the time. And I take a lot of walks in Florida here, a lot of butterflies. And I'm always thinking she's watching me because she used to say, you got to watch. She would say, what's wrong with my boys? She had 8 of them and 3 girls. And she was hardest on the girls. You know why? It was be a woman. Yeah. So I was spoiled. I had great parents. And so I think that's about it. I finally paid off debt. That's the other thing that happened in my 60-something years, I paid off my my condo in Florida, so I was happy with that. These are small achievements, but you know what? It doesn't matter. I'm just practical. I don't waste shit. I live alone, and so that's what I wanted to talk about. So I've already submitted the video about life after wife number 1, and then I thought I'd just talk about those 22 years. And by the way, during those 22 years and so on, or more, because now I'm in my 70s, I've started and exited 8 different businesses, including YouTube. YouTube is a business to me. Haven't exited it yet, but I have plans. After I build to a certain point, and then my age is going to tell me more, but I'm always coming up with ideas, and what to talk about. And I'm very concerned about people that have been through a divorce, male or female, and don't have hope or give up on their kids or give up on themselves. You can do this. There's a reason why you went through a divorce. It's either, and let's face it, it takes 2. And I'm always talking about male, female. So, I just kept my values, my parents, how they raised me. I have a political position. I'm a conservative person. I have a religion and a faith. I'm pro-life. I love kids. And I have financial aspirations. So now that my kids are older and they have their own children, which are my grandchildren, they all have spouses. They gotta deal with what's behind closed doors. It's not my problem. I support them, but guess what? They gotta live their own lives. And that's one of the reasons why I went on YouTube. Is Dad's life was pretty fucked up. But guess what? I kept it quiet. This is what's gonna happen. And now I'm looking towards my future, whatever that may be. So this is a lengthy video, but I tried to consolidate it into 22 years, but I'm also hoping that you all look at your own lives and say, you know what? Yeah, I want to do that. Or you don't want to have any regrets, man. You don't want to have any regrets. I don't care how many times you're married. I don't regret my marriage, the first one. Why? I got my 3 kids. And I wouldn't be who I am today without my 3 kids. I wouldn't know what to do with myself. Okay? And the second wife, I just realized, oh my God. Do I regret it? No. Here's what I learned from my second wife in a positive way. She taught me how to eat better, how to take care of my health better. What else could I say? She deepened my faith because she had her faith and I had my faith, which was one of my criteria. I wanted to marry a woman that was Catholic because we could relate. And I actually met her in a Catholic church, not on a dating app like my sister says. How'd you guys meet? SugarDaddy.com? And of course I respond, no, stupid.com. So anyway, there's always a benefit. God's not going to screw you over, man. You just got to get through it. And this is one of my deals. I got to get through it. This is very therapeutic talking about this stuff. I know I'm hurting people, but I got to talk the truth, man. Talk the truth. And then at the same time, be modest, be humble, and move on. Now, will I meet other people? Of course. I meet them every day. I'm going bowling now. I'll meet people. Hello, So, anyway, that's it. This is Rock. I'll talk to you soon, as I always say, very soon. God bless.